System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' inner city left.
This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Today is Thursday, September 18th. I am Amin TMK alongside Emoja, Lil Tanky, Sumler. Emoja, hello. Happy Tuesday, Wednesday?
No.
I don't even know. Thursday. Good God. We missed an episode. So yeah, I'm a little all over the place.
Life is busy, y'all. Life is busy. Hey, but we got y'all on Sunday. We got a special one coming up. Boom.
Exactly. So stay tuned, and also go back and check out our interview with Butch Ware and our last broadcast. So lots of things for you guys to catch up on, because there's lots of news out there. And let's talk about some news, some geopolitics. Tanky, what are your thoughts? You want to talk about some geopolitics?
Always.
All right, check this out. Saudi Arabia, nuclear armed Pakistan sign mutual defense pact. You know, they always got to say that. Pakistan's got nukes. I don't see nuclear armed Israel anywhere. But anyway, Saudi Arabia, nuclear armed Pakistan signed mutual defense pact. That is Mohammed bin Salman right there for the folks.
Baby billionaire club.
Yes, sir. And Pakistan's Prime Minister, Shahbaz Sharif. Okay. So what do you know about this? And I was thinking about, is this some blowback from the Qatari, attack by the Israelis? Because this seems like a really big deal. Not to mention, Pakistan was also going very hard in the UN, talking about, Israel doesn't have any allies. If and they kind of was being
call them a pariah state.
Yeah, they was definitely going in.
Yeah, look, this is 1 billion% blowback from this. We talk about the decline of the West, and nowhere is that more apparent maybe than in like the ways that the state used to be able to operate based upon the ways that the state now operates. You and I were having a conversation about this a little while ago about in Ronald Reagan's America, what happened in Qatar would have been handled very differently. You would have sent a couple of, Mission Impossible, Tommy Cruise, you send James Bond in there, and now it's some polonium in the pancakes. You know what I'm saying? Ooh, I got a tummy ache. And it's over.
He died of a mysterious illness.
No one will ever know. People think it's COVID. It was your ass all along, right? That's not where the West is now. Like, they don't have human intelligence like that anymore. Everything is digital. Everything is, we pick something up on the internet. We got a cell phone, right? So, like, the fact that they sent the IDF into Qatar, or at least standoff missile strikes inside Qatar. There's arguments as to where the actual shots happened from. Did they fire from Syrian airspace? Did they fire from Saudi Arabian airspace? Did they, fire from Iraqi airspace? The United States controls the airspace in Iraq for sure. And by de facto, it controls the airspace in Saudi Arabia because of their military defense agreements that includes buying military hardware like Patriot systems and all of that. You're tied into a network. The only country that does like that standoff military stuff is like India. And that's where their stuff isn't that good. Like everything today has to be built into the network, Like Americans, man, we got refrigerators on the internet. You know what I'm saying? Like today, real military tech is all deeply integrated. So like when you buy a Patriot SAM system, you're tied into a much larger network that's talking to your planes, it's talking to your tanks, all of that.
You got one person that's dressing you.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. So the fact that the Israelis were able to launch these strikes from wherever they fired, and Qatar wasn't aware, let's go with the official
story. That's the official statement, yeah. Everywhere you look at it, it looks really bad.
Yeah, again, there's a couple of ways to read it. Qatar wasn't aware, and the United States that had, up until this time, a military protection pact with Qatar. Let's not forget, Qatar is the country that gifted the Americans, by way of Trump, the new Air Force One, right? That's an incredibly expensive plane as a gift. And then less than 2 months later, the IDF flies and shoots missiles into your country. Like, that's not supposed to happen. That's insulting for Qatar for so many reasons, of which we've talked about a little bit of it. But let's also talk about things that Americans might not understand on a cultural level, and that is hospitality and Arab hospitality, which is you could speak on it better than I, but it's a tradition that goes all the way back to the Bedouins. If I invite you into my home, you are under my de facto protection. So when these Palestinian negotiators came to Qatar, it was under the de facto promise of protection from the Qatari government. So when you strike these people now, it says that these people can't protect you. Qatar can't protect you. Qatar isn't, and so it becomes much more than an insult to the Palestinian negotiation team. It becomes a de facto insult to all of the Arab nations, all of the Muslim nations. And this is exactly part of that blowback. This is the Arabs saying to themselves, or at least the Muslims, because Pakistanis are not Arab. You know what I'm saying? Like, people miss that often. Muslim and Arab are not synonymous,
Same thing with Afghanistan. People say, oh, yeah, Middle East. No, bro, not Arabs.
Right.
Just Islam just swept through all of Asia. I hate to tell you, you know what I'm saying? But
right,
it's what tends to happen.
Yeah, and so that's that situation. And Pakistan has been taking a stronger stance for a long time, because let's not forget, Israel has had a long look. Israel will not suffer any Muslim nation to be nuclear armed, whether they're in the Middle East or not. And you could argue that Pakistan is not even in the Middle East. You know what I'm saying? It's
not. It's South Asia.
Yeah, you're past Iran for fuck's sake,
And Iran wouldn't consider themselves Arabs and barely would consider themselves Middle East, which is not even a real term, to be honest. But, we use it because it's
convenient.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, some people would say near Asia, those kind of statements. But yeah, right. So and this is, again, there has been rumors for decades that Israel was behind, putting the battery in the back of India to go to war with Pakistan. Everybody wants to do proxy wars right now because nobody wants to get caught with their hand in the cookie jar. And plausible deniability is an incredibly important thing in geopolitics. We got this whole dance, in Russia with the United States right now, where the United States is de facto arming NATO, which is de facto arming the Ukrainians. And yet the president of the United States is like, I need to sit down with Putin and Zelensky. They hate each other and only I can bring the peace. Yeah, you bring the peace because you're putting the battery in Ukraine's back by giving them the weapons. HIMARS aren't made in Ukraine, right? So that's the same kind of dance that Israel has done for a long time. And India has quite extensive ties to Israel, especially the Israeli military industrial complex and their spy industrial complex, which has created all kinds of problems for them geopolitically as it relates to BRICS, as it relates to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, sometimes even having meetings, closed door meetings where India is not invited because they feel like India is de facto compromised. You see what I'm saying? So the fact that Pakistan is now explicitly providing a nuclear umbrella to the Saudis. First off, a lot of people should feel happy about this, right? I think it plays well in the non-proliferation area where now the Saudis, what Mohammed bin Salman has said for all of his many flaws for quite some time. Saudi Arabia has no interest in nuclear weapons. Nuclear weapons are a bill that you have to pay for forever, that you can never use. You know what I'm saying? They're actually quite expensive. The upkeep of nuclear weapons and a nuclear weapon arsenal is not an inexpensive thing. And if you don't plan to use them, they're a fool's errand. You become a pariah. Most countries become a pariah state.
Well, that's how it was. North Korea was the one. But now you're thinking to yourself, well, with what happened in Iran, I don't know, maybe we should create a nuclear weapon. But this defense pact may help with that, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, and like there has been a codification of de facto is just my word right now, because with a lot of this stuff, it's not set in stone, but there's been a codification of a de facto naval alliance between the Iranians and the Saudis. They've been doing naval exercises together, So like the Persian Gulf is kind of coalescing, in spite of all, or at least those are the appearances, I mean, maybe there's a bigger game being played on all of this, and somebody's a mole and it's like, oh, we're all in it together. And then, you house afraid of shit when it goes crazy, haha, we were always working for the Americans and the Israelis. Right? All of that is possible. But right now, it looks less probable than normal. I mean, the meeting in Doha where all of the Arab nations came, all of the Muslim nations came, and they pontificated for quite a long time, about what should we do? Like, this really broke the world. As Israel does often, I mean, never forget that no one should feel comfortable even getting on planes with cell phones, after what happened with the whole pager incident. That shows how all of this stuff is security theater. You got BB less than a week ago saying, everybody with a cell phone has a little piece of Israel in their hands. Like, what the fuck does that mean? What does that mean?
Yeah, Israel is forcing a lot of countries, just like the United States, forcing a lot of countries to get together that would normally get together. And I think everyone's courting India now. Everyone's trying to figure out, okay, where is India going to go? And we already seen with the Donnie J Truth Social post that, he is also like, hey, Modi, you're a good guy. Called you the other day, just making sure you're good. You're a great leader, and they're kind of kissing up to India. And Pakistan, I'm sure, is like, well, let's not forget Imran Khan, and the possible connections to the West and his, disallowed to be, run for prime minister or whatever. I mean, Pakistan's probably, over this. And, I don't know what's going to go on with Saudi Arabia. They seem to be a little wish-washy. But when you see stuff like this, it does seem like, good news. And maybe at some point we will see some sort of change, in Gaza because of it. I know that might be a high hope, but I wanted to show you this because I do want to talk a little bit about Gaza, which is now, this is Maha Gaza, and this is Gaza City is now under a total internet blackout. Israel has cut all connections as yet another tool to push residents out. Only those with eSIMs can manage limited access. So again, you have all of this stuff still coming down to Palestine, and everyone is watching what's happening in Gaza. They watch what happened in Yemen. They're watching what happened in Qatar, in Iran. And you're asking yourself, like, why am I not building alliances with Arab nations instead of involving myself with the United States, which it doesn't seem, even if you give them however many, 500 million, $2 billion plane or whatever it is, we can still just say, well, Israel wants to do this, so we're just going to let them. And people in Gaza, the Palestinians, are the ones that are suffering now on a total internet blackout. And, the United States is complicit in this. And I just want to show you one more thing. If that's all right with you, my friend, because there's been a lot of conversation now about all the fancy experts. There's lots of fancy experts out there, and they've decided finally, after almost 2 years of a Holocaust, that it is in fact a genocide. Whoa, they figured it out, guys. Mad experts, And one more guy. Let's talk about this. This is a guy by the name of Bernie Sanders. Bernie Panders, racist grandpa. Tanky is rubbing his brow right there in frustration. But yes, Bernie Sanders came out yesterday and said that, yes, it is in fact the war in Gaza is a genocide. If you take a moment to read my op-ed, and this is his op-ed. This is how it begins. It is a genocide. September 17, 2025, that's when the article was written. The first sentence, Hamas, a terrorist organization, began this war. after you acknowledge that it's a genocide. I don't understand what this means. But again, it's just to show you that in the United States, the rhetoric is so ridiculous and so insane that you are saying it's a genocide because, you know, all of your constituents, all of the people that want to champion you as some bastion of progressive, policies, they're in your face like, wait a minute, why are you supporting G-side? And even now, even after 2 years, we're still seeing, October 7th. And, let's be honest here. Let's just be real people here. October 7th is irrelevant. It is irrelevant when it comes to the 100 years of war from the Balfour Declaration and the White Paper and all the things that go into that. This is so much far beyond October 7th that it's difficult to see someone who's supposed to be intelligent and supposed to be elected by the people to still have this October 7th narrative. And the rhetoric is falling apart. Israel is falling apart in many ways, and the United States is in decline. And, I don't know. There's a lot of things to say. I don't know what your reaction to that is, but, it is a ridiculous thing to watch the United States and Israel just wreak havoc upon the world.
Yeah, man, I can't tell you how many friends I lost trying to explain about the inadequacies of Bernie Sanders' quote unquote progressivism. Right. This is like really the one thing that white leftists just can't let go. They're getting better about it finally, but again,
it's too late, though.
It's too late. It's been too late. And this is not a new position that Bernie Sanders has had. He's been this way for a long time. You can't open up a conversation like that without. OK, so first off, again, the pity is that Americans don't have long term memories as it relates to geopolitics, if at all. People don't realize that for quite a significant portion of Hamas's life, they were funded by the Israelis through the Qataris. You know what I'm saying? I mean, even Bibi Netanyahu talks about this. He talked about it quite recently. This is, so like any conversation about, the evil terrorist organization. Well, if that's who they are, then why were the Israelis funding them, right? Because they wanted something to destabilize the Palestinian street, to show the ineptitude of the Fatah movement. The child of the PLO under Yasser Arafat, right? They needed something to show how feckless they were. So there's a very strong school of thought that says Hamas was always just controlled opposition. No matter what they've become. If you believe they've become something else. That brings us to Gaza, right? In many ways, like when we're talking about what's happening with these Arab nations, we're talking about something that quite potentially is the biggest thumb in the eye to all of the countries that were considering the Abraham Accords. And when you look at what's happening in Gaza City, in many ways, it stands almost like the Israelis are trying to goad the Arab nations into a retaliatory strike. And so far, the only Arab nation that's really risen to the occasion or taken the bait, depending on how you want to look at it, is Yemen. But more and more we get closer to at least the rhetoric getting sharper, right? Yeah. As to look, in the game called capitalism, okay, because this is the thing that you have to look at. And this is why, it's so wrong when people are activists, but they don't look at the finances of things. Like, if you don't understand money, your activism and your progressivism is always going to miss the mark, right? The problem with countries like Saudi Arabia at the end of things is they are capitalist countries, right? What's the point of me being a billionaire, like one of the wealthiest people in the world, if I could lose all my money? This is the threat that the Americans and the American banking organizations have held over everybody. And Russia's the great example of that, how the SWIFT system is still holding that $300 billion of sovereign wealth of the Russians, in sanctions, keeping the Russian government from having access to it. People like Mohammed bin Salman, where pretty much all of your wealth is tied up in Western banks and American dollars, you don't want to lose access of it. All of Iraq's wealth, right, is tied up in American banks right now. So, like, if you find yourself on the wrong end of sanctions, all of it will have been for naught. All of your money is gone. And so, when people are like, oh, why don't these Arab nations do it? Because they don't want to be broke, bro. Like, they don't want to lose access to all of their money because the Europeans will take it. The Americans will take it. Even though it will destabilize the entire financial economy, the global financial economy, there are people that are nihilist enough to be like, well, look, this house of cards is just going to crash anyway. So what the fuck difference? May as well, maybe we can use this money as an interest payment on the, $1 trillion of interest that grows every, 90 days now? And you know what I'm saying?
Oh, boy.
Right? So, like, this is a big part
no more
of
quarterly earnings, by the way.
Right. I think about this all the time. The people that are like, why doesn't China do more? And it's like, you're not even willing to put free watermelon on your Instagram, because you're afraid of losing your job, but you want to criticize, what the Arab nations do or don't do, right? Like, everybody got meat in this game. Everybody got things to lose. And that's before we even talk about the destabilizing factor that is war. Because you know what you need to wage a war? The Ukrainians know. People. And there's no guarantee that the people of Saudi Arabia are willing to enlist in the hundreds of thousands that it would take to go to war with Israel. They've never had to do that before.
I want to say they lost really badly against Yemen. They're supposed to have all the wowie-zowie equipment from the United States, all the backing, all the hype. MBS hyped it up, and they got destroyed.
These are not countries that go to war very often. Like, even in a place, in the example of Saudi Arabia, most of their military forces are actually, they're mostly hired. They're mostly mercenary forces because they have the money to pay people to risk their lives for the kingdom, right? But that's not mostly people that are citizens of the kingdom, right?
Never be a great war machine with those type of people. Right.
And Qatar is in much the same situation. The UAE, Dubai, all of those Emirati nations, they're not military powers. So, like, when people are like, oh, they should go to war with Israel, what you're doing is you're explicitly, right, or at least implicitly, arguing for the greater Israel project, because this is what happened in the quote unquote 6-day war. All of the Arab nations allegedly were going to attack Israel. Israel used it as a provocation and launched a preventative war, and they just stole a lot of Arab land, right? When your country loses, and most of these countries would lose quite severely in a conflict with Israel, you're going to lose land. And here's why you can't guarantee that you'll win. It's not about technology. It's not about anything other than you don't have the love of the people. Russia is, they're having to turn people away from their military. So many Russians want to join the military to defend Mother Russia because they believe in Russian culture. They believe in Russian importance in the global, right? You don't have that kind of feeling in places like Jordan. They're not going to go out and die for the king. They're not going to join the military, and go to, like, even though they may not like Israel, they don't trust the Hashemite king anymore than Israel, because he's been a proxy for so long. And a lot of the Arab street has that feeling. I'm not going to die for Mohammed bin Salman. I'm not going to die for, you see what I'm saying? That's even Assad, that in the end, he lost the people, and that's when he lost the war. You know what I'm saying? Like, countries like Bahrain, they don't necessarily have the love of the people. The people are going to rise up. Same thing with Qatar. The emirs are living great. Is everybody else living great? Are they willing to die?
You got to talk about, the Middle East has been captured by the West for a long time. Like you said, the first King Abdullah, he was already with it. From the beginning, from even the 40s, we want to talk about President General Sisi, another person walking that fine line. One day you hear, okay, well, there's going to be, Chinese military equipment in the Sinai just in case. And then the next day you hear that, them and Israel and Chevron are all doing a deal together. So it's tough because, they've been cut off at the knees. There is no way. Egypt went through two pro-Muslim Brotherhood type candidates, and then they just decided, well, these are the wrong ones, and we'll get another one. We'll get a general to run our country. And UAE is another place that we haven't mentioned, but certainly on there. And the rest of the Middle East has witnessed what's happened in places like Iraq and Syria, still reeling, Lebanon still reeling from just Western involvement and war involvement. So the people certainly know it. They see the leaders in that way, and this is why we always talk about the incredible pushback of the people. And this is something that these leaders have to deal with in a way that maybe everywhere it's like this pushback and blowback and things that you have to address. And maybe the people will do something about it. We don't know. What are your anyway? Those are my thoughts on that. You got your thoughts on that. Let's wrap it up here. I want to give a shout out to our podcast listeners. We're available everywhere you find podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that good stuff. InnerCityLeft.com, Fables, Foibles, Other American Sins. Go ahead and pick that up. We got music available. Search Lil Tanky or Amin TMK. Patreon.com/InnerCityLeft. Over 100 subscribers now. We doing our thing, and we appreciate every single one of y'all. We have free accounts too, if you guys are just interested in just saying hello and those good things. But if you don't have any money, give us a like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Those things definitely help us in the algorithms. And we are over 700 subscribers. We went over 700 subscribers on YouTube today. We're trying to get to 1,000. So tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog, subscribe. And we plan on doing this for a long time. Those are my thoughts. Tanky, what did we miss? Final thoughts, final vibes.
Again, keep your eyes on this Venezuela situation. It feels like in many ways, just like how I was talking about, like the Israelis are trying to goad the Arabs into an attack by how they've treated, Gaza. It looks like in many ways the Americans are trying to goad Venezuela into an attack by continuing to extrajudiciously murder anybody in a boat.
Fishermen. Guys that are out there.
Fisherman got one in his ass coming, man.
And Trump said it too. He even said, he was like, no, we didn't get any drugs, but those fishermen, they're going to be very worried. They're going to be very worried about what happens. And it's like, you got, again, just saying the quiet part out loud. We want your country to suffer and hopefully be destabilized. But, and I wonder why. I wonder why they want it.
All that oil.
I wonder if it's that oil.
And it would have been ours.
Oh.
All up.
It's like Dave Chappelle.
They don't write these things, man. They straight up
right.
say these things, man. And you have all these, again, y'all, this is why leftists doing geopolitics is very important. Because you have all these geopolitics shows out there like, well, we do have to talk about the drug. What from fucking Venezuela? Stop that.
Guys, stop talking about the drug war, please.
Engage in these conversations. Yeah. Even if you believe that, you don't have the right to kill people from other countries in international water. That's against the law.
Ronald Reagan was a drug dealer. Please start there.
Stop there. Start there.
Start there. Yeah, no, again, start there. Or you could start with, what was the queen we were talking about? The number one drug dealer? One of the queens of England, the opium trade. Anyway.
There it is.
Yeah, this is where you can start, friends. Maybe the pharmaceutical industry, maybe the Sackler family and the Purdue Company. Maybe this is a place you want to start.
What happened to Gary Webb?
There it is. That's it for us. For Emoji Lil Tanky Summer, I'm Amin TMK. This is the Inner City Left broadcast. Peace.
System riding to the core. Yeah. Reppin' Inner City Left.